Hello, and welcome to the 12th podcast of Soulful Thoughts from Ireland. I have now been here in Ireland for over 3 months. Remarkable, really. My body feels at home here, and my soul feels in love. I am grateful for this time to be in the natural environment, to be opening my soul to new excursions, and to feel such an at-homeness. May we all feel this. So I welcome you to join me each week as I am weaving new soul stories, reflecting on the times we are currently living in and on this grand pilgrimage of life and death that we are all on. Today, we explore Feasa, wise woman. I am Feasa. These words rose from the depths of my soul as I was on the beach. I did not know what they meant, but immediately I was given the answer to my yet unformed question. It meant wise woman. I walked to the shore and wept. I knew this wise woman was my inner home, the home of who I am. Growing up in New Zealand in the time that I did, self-acknowledgement was not at all encouraged. In fact, it was held in great disdain. One was expected to routinely put oneself down. We were taught not to accept any accolades, and we quickly brushed off anyone trying to give us a compliment. If one grew too tall in one's own esteem, then you were quickly cut down by those around you. This we called the tall poppy syndrome. You were not allowed to stand out. One needed to be like everyone else and not rise above anyone. What a terrible poverty of soul. Fortunately, it has changed. But at that time, we New Zealanders also had a lot of difficulty in accepting the American persona. We perceived it as too loud and showy, overly confident, or what we would say as too cocky. So many tall poppies, and nobody was cutting them down. In fact, just the opposite. They were deliberately growing them. What a travesty! And so when I got the divine call to go to America, I couldn't believe it. Really? To the land of the loud? And look, see who I am and what I can do? Surely not. But yes, it was to be. And of course, what happened when I arrived was I loved it. Who would have thought? After that first visit, I very much wanted to go back. And so it miraculously happened as I won a green card in the lottery. It is now 20 years later, and as I glance back at my upbringing in New Zealand and my time in the United States, I see how they are, or were, the exact opposite of each other. Now, coming to Ireland, I feel the blending of these New Zealand and American ways within me, where there is a quiet confidence that does not need to make a great noise and show what I can do or who I am. But neither do I need to diminish nor cut down my inner and natural abilities. There is a reaching down and anchoring into my deeper soul, into Feasa. Feasa, the wise woman, has long been in both the Irish and Scottish tradition. She is known to easily traverse the other worlds and realms, often seen communicating with the fairy beings and availing herself of their magical and healing abilities. She was the person you went to when other forms of medical or religious healing had not worked, and through her seership, she was able to discern where the person ailing was out of sorts or out of relationship with their surroundings, whether it be themselves, their family, their neighbors, or the natural land, that is, the goddess herself. We could say she was the local shaman who saw into the soul and spirit sickness of a person, whether it be of the personal, community, or cosmic nature. In this way, Feasa restored harmony to the local people and land where she lived. There are stories of her returning souls to their bodies, restoring marriages, and once more ensuring the wealth of the farmer through healing his cattle that had been previously dying. There are also stories of souls being swept away to the fairyland and unable to return to their home. It was to the Feasa that the people went for such things, not the church, who, not being able to tend to the true soul illnesses of the people in the land, began to tell stories that Feasa received her powers from diabolical sources. The people didn't listen and went to her anyway, as she was the one who always helped them, no matter what their troubles were. The priest would try to keep the people away by demonizing her as best as they could. But there are stories where Feasa directly shows the priest her powers, putting him in his place, if you will, and he then changes his tune and praises her healing abilities. One such story comes from Feasa here in Iries, exactly where I am in the southwest of Cork. Her name was Moira. While riding on his horse, the priest's hat was suddenly taken up into the air and away from him, but seemingly, quite miraculously, it landed back down on his head again. Then the exact same action repeated itself once more, with the hat being taken off and away, and then coming back and landing squarely back on his head. When he arrived home, Moira was there, waiting for him. She asked him, "Did your hat suddenly come flying off your head and then miraculously land back down again? Twice on your way home?" He admitted that in fact this is exactly what happened. She told him, "Aye, it was the fairies taking and playing with your hat, and it was me that put it back on your head, both times." From there on in, this priest began to speak well of Moira and commended her healing abilities to the people. Moira had clearly had enough of his ill talk about her and wanted to settle it once and for all. This story of Moira reminds me of the story of Yeshua and Nathaniel. Philip, who had become a follower of Yeshua, tells Nathaniel about this one who has come. Nathaniel replies, "How can any good come from Nazareth?" When they meet, Yeshua looks him in the eye and says, "I can see there is no guile, no deceit in you." Of course, Yeshua was exposing the hidden deceit that was lying within Nathaniel, and knowing he had been seen, he asks Yeshua, "How do you know me?" Yeshua replies that he saw him under the fig tree even before he met Philip. And at that, Nathanael declares his belief in Yeshua. Yeshua simply replied, "You believe after such a simple demonstration? You will see far greater things than this." I feel Moirae was also showing a small ability of her power to the priest. And like Nathanael, the priest was easily won over. Babes in the wood. I wonder how many of us are the same, so easily impressed by others, yet so unaware of the natural power within our own souls. I also wonder how many of us have been swept away to some other land and not able to come back home to our true nature. Mostly, these lands are places and stories in the past, our souls lost in another time. Feasa was known to also go beyond the physical laws of this earth. That is, she was able to bilocate and could be accounted for in two different places at the same time, often healing two different people at the same time. She also had the ability to move very swiftly, covering long distances in impossibly short amounts of time. Being a seer, she would show up when not yet called for, but when someone was in dire need of healing. Ankalak, the crone and or great mother of the earth, and Feasa were intimately connected. And through the years and generations, they often became interchangeable through the local storytelling. Feasa, we could say, was the representative of an embodied form of the goddess herself, knowing the secrets of living in harmony with all. Here in Ireland, I can talk of having visions of people who have died, of communicating with the fairies and beings from other realms, and they don't blink an eye. My landlady, Fran, said, "Ah, yes, there are people who have this sight," as if it was as natural as our physical sight, which, of course, it is to some. In these difficult times that we are living through, it is not uncommon for old trauma or past wounding to resurface. It has become a wonderful portal of time for the inner shadow of humanity to rise, both personally and collectively, as we are certainly witnessing. An old trauma of my own arose, and it was quite intense. I was praying for it to be fully revealed and then healed. I walked out onto the land by the sea and came to what I know is a fairy mound. When first walking there a little while ago, I walked right over and through their mound. But then my sight opened, and I saw within to their realm and home. I apologized for my human clumsiness and lack of awareness. So now, walking, carrying the trauma that was arising, I stopped at their mound, and I saw them knitting furiously. I wondered at the intense nature of their actions and what they were knitting. They told me, "We are re-knitting your trauma and making you a garment of comfort, the comfort you have always desired. What an incredible gift. As the trauma healed, I witnessed an old skin fall away from me. To start, I felt an incredible vulnerability. Yet soon thereafter, I felt a new skin, a new garment begin to cover and infuse itself with me. The old skin was a false protection, keeping life out. The new garment, that which had been re-knitted by the fairies, was the true covering and protection of the soul. It was open, porous, and very comforting. Thank you, beloved fairies. I went to them with a small offering that I placed upon their mound. This time, I saw them knitting with very large needles, and they were knitting very, very slowly. We are now knitting your Feasa cloak, they said, and continued with their slow wisdom stitches. I pray at this time that humanity may release its old skin of fear and false protection, and that all the wounding, sorrow, and trauma be re-knitted, rewoven into a garment of love and togetherness. And may we have many wise women and men rising to wear their own cloaks of wisdom. So I wish you all well during this week. May any old trauma be re-knitted within you, bringing you the comfort that you have always desired. May your own wisdom rise. I wish you good health, good fortune, and joy. Please join me next week. Slan.